Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. Beginning with China, imposing new retaliatory tariffs on certain U.S. agricultural goods this week. President Donald Trump says his trade policies will make the U.S. richer in the end, but his administration is starting to acknowledge the potential for at least some short-term pain for Americans. Amy Kiley has the latest on escalating trade tensions.
In trade, as in hockey, Canada will win.
Some American trade partners are cracking down on U.S. exports. Starting today, American farmers face new retaliatory tariffs on many products they send to China. The measures include an extra 15% duty on chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton, and a 10% one on items such as beef and soybeans. Some American farmers say they're worried escalating trade tensions could make it harder to sell their products abroad.
Everything we produce far exceeds what the domestic market could handle.
Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's newly elected successor is standing by Canada's retaliation against the U.S.
And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
President Donald Trump is doubling down. He says some tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods scheduled for April 2nd, quote, could go up. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says duties on steel and aluminum imports are set to start Wednesday. Most mainstream economists say tariffs can be inflationary. Lutnick acknowledges some prices might rise in the U.S., but Trump says any pain would be short term.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Maintain, nourish, and support your health by visiting our Good Health, Good Life shopping tab. You'll find select multivitamins, probiotics, and more designed for you. Make the Good Life even better and promote your health in 2025.
Mental health professionals in Nebraska say they're worried the Trump administration's proposed $880 billion in Medicaid funding cuts would threaten progress the state has made in getting help to those who need it. The reductions could have a dramatic impact on the 345,000 Nebraskans who rely on Medicaid as their only source of health insurance. The Nebraska-based Community Alliance says the state has had recent success getting higher Medicaid reimbursement rates for providers and has expanded services. They say cuts would hurt people who need help the most, those struggling with mental health problems, people with disabilities, and kids.
Nearly half of Medicaid enrollees in Nebraska are under the age of 20. And I think people need to understand that impact it'll have on our children in Nebraska, and that means our future in Nebraska.
Brady says these steep cuts at the federal level would require dramatic cuts to services to Nebraskans, especially when considering the degree to which the state relies on federal money.
58% of every dollar is a federal dollar, 42% of those dollars are state dollars. If those cuts would come into play, that $880 billion over a period of time, that's going to create a fundamental shift in how services are delivered, the shift of cost to the states, or it's going to result in a significant cut.
The Trump administration following through on a campaign promise to cut federal spending across the board. Medicaid cuts expected to be a key sticking point in the House budget unveiled by Speaker Mike Johnson over the weekend. Almost as if it's a foreshadowed warning about the dangers of Monday, firefighters responded to a wheat stubble blaze near Sydney on Sunday. Volunteer firefighters, including crews from Sydney, responded to the area located south of a county road in Cheyenne County between Adams Industries and Progress Rail Service along a rail track north of Sydney and east of Brownson. 3 separate areas were contained as an estimated 30 acres were burned. Sydney Fire Chief Matt Butts says crews brought the flames under control after about 45 minutes with 6 fire trucks and 16 personnel responding. No one was injured. There were no structures damaged, no train engines nor cars were ever threatened. Conditions at the time were warm and dry with winds gusting out of the north-northwest, close to 20 miles an hour. Firefighters stayed at the scene through the late afternoon, extinguishing hot spots. The Nebraska Forest Service says nearly 40 fires broke out across the state last week, and conditions could be favorable for more fires like this on Monday, with red flags in effect for most of Nebraska through 8 p.m. A busy weekend for the Grand Island Fire Department, with an apartment home going up in flames on Saturday. Grand Island Fire called to the blaze in the 400 block of Koenig Street. Saturday, the structure completely engulfed. One person was flown from the scene to an Omaha hospital suffering from smoke inhalation. A witness who lived nearby said the fire department was on the scene for about 2.5 hours before leaving. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. 2 people were cited following a weekend crash in northeast Nebraska. It happened Sunday afternoon at the intersection of Highway 275 and Highway 57 north of Stanton. Stanton County Sheriff's officials say a westbound SUV turned in front of an eastbound SUV and was struck broadside. The eastbound driver treated at the scene and cited for failure to yield. The other driver cited for having a suspended license. Airbags credited for lessening the injuries in the crash. AARP Nebraska says they're increasing their focus on educating people about cryptocurrency scams. A measure tightening restrictions on crypto kiosks, which are often used by criminals trying to divert money, unanimously passed a final stage of debate in the Nebraska unicameral last week. Legislative Bill 609 requires operators of cryptocurrency kiosks, which operate a lot like ATMs, to be licensed under the state's Money Transmitters Act. AARP Nebraska says the bill fits perfectly with the organization's Savings and Financial Resilience Initiative throughout the month of March, focusing on guarding against criminals who carry out financial scams.
We know fraudulent activity targeting older Americans specifically is on the rise, and even here in the state of Nebraska. And primarily, a lot of that financial resilience and that education is learning about perpetrators of financial crimes.
AARP Nebraska has advocated for tougher cryptocurrency kiosk regulation for several years. They remind older consumers not to overreact when they're presented with a crisis, even when it seems like time is of the essence.
Even in the heat of a moment when you feel emotionally involved and caught up, we always tell people just stop and pause and step back from the situation. There is no situation, no matter how dire it is, that has to be solved in that immediate moment.
The city of Omaha, meanwhile, has taken crypto kiosk regulation a step further. Businesses operating machines there have to post a written notice warning consumers of the potential fraud risks that accompany them. Nebraska's governor tabbing the state's interim labor director to the permanent post. Governor Jim Pillen announcing on Monday that he's appointing Katie Thurber for the top labor spot. She's been acting labor commissioner since John Albin retired at the end of last year. Pillen says she's been with the Labor Department since 2012. Her appointment is subject to legislative approval. And finally in sports, when Milford and Lincoln Christian faced off back on New Year's Eve, it was clear they were 2 of the best teams in Class C1. And this past weekend, they were the final 2 teams standing. Tim Hackett brings us highlights from this year's C1 Girls Basketball Championship from Lincoln.
For the second consecutive season, the Lincoln Christian Crusaders are the champions in Class C1 girls basketball. Milford and Lincoln Christian facing off for the second time this season, this time with a state title at stake. Ayla Roth did her thing in the first half for the Eagles, attacking in transition, driving the rim, and finishing in traffic. But Kenna Ailes was excellent all game for the Crusaders. She nearly had a double-double in the first half alone. The game was tied after the first quarter and still tied at halftime, 25-25. But the third quarter was when the Crusaders made their move. 4 different players sank 3-pointers to help Lincoln Christian take a 6-point lead going into the final frame, and Ailes sealed up the championship at the free throw line. Lincoln Christian was the only team to defeat Milford this season, and this latest win carries with it the Crusaders' second straight state championship with a 49-42 win.
I like this team. I think that this team can play with anybody in the state, one game. You know, for us at Lincoln Christian to go undefeated, no team's ever done that, to win back-to-back titles. You know, they to me, are the best team to ever go through Lincoln Christian.
I mean, we made history. Nobody at our school has been able to go back-to-back, so that's just a huge special thing for our school community, just to show everybody that Lincoln Christian belongs at the state tournament and they can win a state championship.
Proud of our kids. I think they fought, they wanted this opportunity. We were not satisfied with just being here. They're competitive kids. Just proud of how they fought.
Lincoln Christian head coach Scott Klein said an undefeated season was never his team's initial goal at the outset of this year, but that's what his Crusaders accomplished today, capping off a perfect 28-0 campaign with their second consecutive state championship. From Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln, Tim Hackett, News Channel Nebraska Sports.
And you can find many more highlights from the state tournament last week and stay up to date with the very latest in news and sports by visiting us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. This is News Channel Nebraska.